couple of problems with that one because for previous forecasted data, people don't store it. So that was a serious problem. I mean, we found one website, forecast.io, that had it, but then they got bought out like a few months ago by Apple, and then since then that data hasn't been available. So for next steps, I'm kind of thinking, what can we do with actual temperature data that we do have moving forward, like if we don't have the forecasted? So I've been looking into some research papers, and there were a couple of suggestions, none of which I really makes so much sense to me. So I guess the question I have for you is, what would you recommend, knowing that all we have right now is maybe actual temperatures, rainfall, precipitation, and all that?
So I have 2 points to add here. One would be you can maybe explore some of the data APIs which provide alternative data. You might find forecasted weather data. It might be a function of how expensive it is or how long back the entire data is available for. So at least you should scope it to get an idea how available the data is. Maybe you can also look for data sources on Kaggle. So Kaggle is where they share notebooks, right? Notebooks and scripts. But oftentimes people also dump their raw data or share the source where they use the raw data from. So you can explore that regarding the data aspect. And the second point, what you mentioned for what you can do with actual weather data, right? Not predicted, the actual weather data historical. So it is a I would say it would be less inclined towards the alternative data side of the quant strategy. But what you can do is maybe correlate that data to some of the futures which are affected, commodity futures to be clear, some of the commodity futures which are affected by specific weather patterns. Say, for example, you can look at how specifically hot summer changes the price of cotton or wheat futures and so on and so forth. You can maybe get that, but this aspect would be more geared towards the macroeconomic understanding of how these commodity futures have some sort of seasonality in the data, right? So every year from January to December, there is a particular seasonality effect which you can find, and you have to bear in mind that seasonality is not the only factor which is at play, right? Lot of other factors like geopolitics or some sort of country specific economic policy, all those have a major impact in the commodity futures market. So when you are trying to understand how weather affects a particular commodity future or a set of commodity futures, you have to be a bit open-minded. You cannot afford the risk of only looking at weather, right? So if you're looking at the other macroeconomic factors, it would give you a better understanding. Your scope of understanding will be very limited, I would say.
Okay. Well, I haven't looked at Kaggle yet, but I did for the APIs, I did look through about 35 to 40 different APIs. It was just the forecast.io that actually kept the historical forecast data. In fact, a lot of them would say they have it, but all they had was actual temperatures. They didn't have the what's it called, previous forecast. They normally don't keep that kind of data because once it's wrong, they didn't see any need to store that. But yeah, I'll look into this data source, Kaggle. And so what other, I mean, other than weather, since we're looking at more of like macroeconomic understanding, if we're using just the actual weather data, what other, how do I put this? What other things do you think we need to look at other than weather if we're going that route?
So if you are more inclined towards implementing a alternative database strategy, right? And if weather data is not available with you, then you can look at things like maybe consumer data, like footfall in a particular mall, or what is the concentration of SIM cards in a particular area of a city, like New York City, right? So
Okay.
you might have seen some of the infographics on LinkedIn, uh, like how New Yorkers behave over the 24 hours of the day, right? So those infographics are compiled using specific concentration of uh, uh, active SIM cards throughout the day. So this data is fetched from network carriers, and then if they are in a single place for maybe 6 or 7 hours, so it can be either a workplace or a home, and depending on the actual city layout, they can figure it out. So it's definitely, I highlighted it in the beginning as well, and I would highlight it again now. Alternative data is very difficult to work with, and you need to have a larger understanding of how the entire scheme of things is working, right? So you cannot simply use one small aspect like Google search analytics data and then use that to predict the PNL of any particular consumer based company. Or you cannot simply use
All right.
the subscriber information or the number of new subscribers over the month and then predict how the price of a particular streaming platform might move, because that is a very limited set of data which you are working with. You need to have a slightly broader horizon and try to incorporate more things into your signal process.
All right. Okay.
Uh, One more thing which you can explore maybe when it comes to the scope of getting data is a lot of I have seen electrical engineers working in renewable energy sectors like GE Power and so on. They have worked on a lot of internship projects like uh, the wind patterns and weather data regarding uh, uh, wind movement, right? Wind speeds and whatnot. So they use that data to predict how much power generation can be achieved in a particular site through the course of 1 year. And that is how they uh, select a particular area for setting up a wind farm, if it is feasible or not. So some of these notebooks I have seen across in Kaggle. I have dropped the name of the website, the Kaggle, which I mentioned, right? So in the chat, you can maybe look
Yeah.
it up. You might find out old data like before 2015 or something like that, but at least you will find out ways on how you can tap into weather data and come up with something more quantitative in nature.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. We did work on that. All right. Thank you so much. I mean, those are all the questions I had on my end. Once we had an issue collecting the forecasted data, I just started looking for other alternatives. Um, yeah, but thank you. I'll look at Kaggle and I'll see what I can find there, and I'll sorry, I'll
Sure,
come up
sure.
with an update on the project. Yeah.
Thank you.
Quick question while you're here. Are you guys keeping an eye on any of the European energy prices and stuff? Because it's what I've seen, it seems kind of crazy what's going to happen in the next couple months.
Sorry, I cannot comment on that.
Okay.
Sam, I mean, what kind of question is that?
Hey, I didn't ask for his trading strategy. I just asked
No,
if
but
he's
you can't.
if he's
No,
looking
let's
at it.
no, no. Let's don't ask personal question, professional question. This is not.
It's all right. It's all right. But yeah, I'm not at liberty to